If HBO's Chernobyl was a series with a new disaster every season, what event would you like to see covered? Challenger. Halifax explosion. Bhopal. It injured a lot of people and the series of mistakes that caused it to occur is insane. #X200B, edit. This was a chemical leak that killed 2,500 people in the immediate aftermath and thousands more long-term. 558,125 injuries were recorded due to it. Craig Mazin's Twitter was inundated for a while with Indians asking him to do a series on Bhopal. The Kashtim disaster. https://wikipedia.org Kashtim disaster. Only Chernobyl and Fukushima have ranked as worse incidents, but Kashtim affected 4x as many people. Because of the secrecy surrounding the facility, nobody was told anything about it until a week later when soldiers suddenly showed up and started slaughtering all the livestock and burning everything, not telling all the people why they were being rounded up and evacuated. They said it was a special disease. Some other people weren't evacuated for a year or more. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire in 1911. Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's a ghost town because the coal that runs under the city is on fire. It has been for many years. Edit. Thank you for the precious metals. Also, if you are intrigued by Centralia, look up the Times Beach. Mo https://www.slmag.com. Remember Times Beach, the dioxin disaster, 30 years later disaster that also required the town to be evacuated. Tiananmen Square massacre. The Costa Concordia. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Costa Concordia. The mixture of incredibly brave and competent people versus the idiot captain and the spectacular nature the disaster itself would make for some damn incredible television. I'd love to see lots of different perspectives on it. BP oil spill. On that note, I recommend watching the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary on the Hillsborough Stadium disaster. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Hillsborough disaster, edit. I see a lot of Liverpool fans commenting on this. Those of you who read your soccer might recognize me as a Napolista, but I have nothing but sympathy for Merseyside regarding one of the darkest days in football history. Non sarai mai sola, you'll never walk alone. I would like the 1917 Canadian blast. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Halifax explosion. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Halifax explosion. The largest man-made explosion until nuclear bombs in 1945. Not so much for the blast but for the rebuilding and dealing with it. The Great Fire of London. Edit. Thanks for Silver Nice Stranger. Hurricane Katrina. Edit. Thank you, loving the conversation. The Walkerton water tragedy. Please. I lived through it. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Walkerton.cli outbreak #outbreak https://wikipedia.org Wiki Walkerton.cli outbreak #outbreak. We drank contaminated water for almost a week before they told us the truth. 7 people died, including one of my family members. We were all sick, and no one knew what was happening. The water treatment plant tried to cover it up by pumping chlorine into the wells, to hide the contaminated test results. The hospital was flooded with people and, because they were told it couldn't be E. coli, they were treating the wrong illness and actually made it worse. In some cases the hospital staff were told specifically that the water wasn't the problem, and so they advised us to drink water to help with the sickness. I wish someone would tell our story. Edit. 6 people died and over 2,000 were made seriously ill with HUS or related. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Hemolytic uremic syndrome. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Hemolytic uremic syndrome. Fukushima. The tsunami in Thailand in 2004. The Hartford Circus Fire https://n.wikipedia.org Wiki Hartford Circus Fire would make a great story. It killed 167 people and injured more than 700 in a place that was supposed to be full of happiness and joy. Because of this famous photograph of sad clown Emmett Kelly with bucket of water https://i.imgur.com 3arn5px.jpg it became known as the day the clowns cried. This is from the wiki about the start of the fire and sounds like a scene out of a show. The fire began as a small flame after the lions performed, on the southwest side wall of the tent, while the Great Wallendas were performing. Circus band leader Merle Evans was said to have been the first to spot the flames, and immediately directed the band to play the Stars and Stripes Forever, the tune that traditionally signaled distress to all circus personnel. Ringmaster Fred Bredna urged the audience not to panic and to leave in an orderly fashion, but the power failed and he could not be heard. Bredna and the ushers unsuccessfully tried to maintain some order as the panicked crowd tried to flee the big top. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911. 150 died, most of them young women, because the doors were locked to prevent workers from taking breaks and inventory and they couldn't leave the building. This sparked outrage and spurred the development of many work safety standards we have today. Would have been a tragic show but interesting to see how it changed the safety of work in the West. The owners of the building escaped alive via the roof and were indicted for manslaughter, got off with paying a fine, and then were found to have locked the doors at their next factory as well. Wikipedia, https://n.m.wikipedia.org Wiki Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. Jonestown. The bombing of Black Wall Street. Mount St. Helens eruption. The Great Fire of Rome, with as much historical accuracy as possible, and the aftermath too. Or they could just make a high-budget, book-accurate new version of Quo Vadis. That would work too. The Great Molasses Flood. https://n.wikipedia.org Wiki Great Molasses Flood. Seriously, 21 people died. The Great Storm that hit Galveston in 1900. Incredible damage, 6,000 to 12,000 people died. It remains America's worst natural disaster. Lots of personal accounts to go on too. The Exxon Valdez oil spill. There's a series of episodes of American Scandal that almost scratched the surface of the shit that went down. Edit, I'd like to add, yes, there is a movie that was made in 1992 for HBO, Dead Ahead, as has been pointed out in the comments, which I definitely need to watch. I do think that there's quite a bit more that can be covered than in 90 or so minutes, and in a serial format like the op asked. Maybe not 5 to 6 hours like Chernobyl, but enough for 3 to 4 healthy episodes. Emo. Emu War. Pompeii. Keeping with the theme of radiation, I would like to see a season about the aftermath of the Hiroshima bomb. The 1992 law riots. It could be awesome. Not really the kind of disaster you're talking about, but all the shit going on in Enron leading up to it imploding. Hindenburg would be awesome, but I doubt it would make a full 5-hour miniseries. But awesome nonetheless. The Spanish flu in 1918. The Donner Party. I just read the fantastic book The Indifferent Stars Above, and their winter in the mountains was one of the most harrowing crazy ducking things I've ever read about. 911. The Aberfon Disaster, 1966. The Maguindanao Massacre https://n.wikipedia.org Wiki Maguindanao Massacre. A convoy of 6 vehicles carrying at least 34 journalists, lawyers, and relatives of the vice mayor of the town Uansay, was stopped by 100 armed men, who abducted and later killed most or all of its members. There is evidence that at least 5 of the female victims, 4 of them journalists, were raped before being killed, while practically all of the women had been shot in their genitals and beheaded. All of them were buried, including the vehicles. I would love to see something on the Spanish flu pandemic. Over 50 million people dead in the span of a year, with some guesses up to 100 million. 50% of all people, in the entire world, coming down with the flu at some point in that time. Most deaths occurring to those between 18 and 40. The symptom of cryonisis, skin turning black due to lack of oxygen, making people think it is a new Black Death as their own immune system was destroying their lungs, causing ARDS the same way that mustard gas was to soldiers on the front. One expert even saying that it might cause the end of civilization, and yet after a few years people just forgot. That shit is whack, man. Just the fact that places like Philadelphia became ghost towns overnight and lost something like 7,000 people a week for 3 weeks in a row. I want to see something on this, man. The 100-year anniversary of the month with the most deaths happened last October, and yet I have only seen a resurgence of historical papers and a single PBS special that only used it as reference. Just the image of bodies stacking up in morgues to the point where they are stacked to the ceiling and you still have to step over some must be interesting to someone other than me. Please. I've been doing full-time research on this lately and I need someone to agree with me that this is interesting beyond the simple historic sense. Maybe not a series since dairy's not really an eye content, but I'd love to see a dramatization of the Coconut Grove fire. It was the deadliest nightclub fire in US history that killed 492 people on the evening of November 28, 1942. Apparently the fire spread so quickly that most patrons had absolutely no chance. Not to mention the lack of emergency exits and the fact that the death toll alone was something like 10 to 15 more people than the building's capacity limit.